On this day, in the year 1971, 16th of December 1971, a nation was born in Bharat's neighborhood with Bharat's support. Bangladesh marks Vijay Diwas, when it was freed from the clutches of Pakistan. But what we see in our neighborhood today in 2024 is not the Bangladesh Bharat liberated. Did Bharat let Bangladesh forget? There's a resurgence of Islamist extremism. There's grave threat to regional stability. The current interim government under Muhammad Yunus doesn't refrain from showing leniency towards radical groups. The ban on Jamaat-e-Islami has been lifted. Extremists have been allowed to resurface with impunity. Harkatul Jihad, Ansar Bangla team are preparing for attacks against Bharat. Radical groups are threatening bases in Assam and Kolkata. The economic partnerships and projects are almost on the brink. The initiatives fostering mutual growth have almost become a thing of the past, and the new radical government is seen cozying up with entities inimical to Bharat. A firmer strategy by Bharat after Bangladesh's liberation could have perhaps ensured regional stability. What Bharat couldn't do earlier and what Bharat should do now to help maintain regional stability is develop a fresh strategy for engagement to also show that in this region, peace will be maintained and the borders will be safe, trade will happen, economics will happen, people will flourish, humanity will flourish only if there is an alignment with the vision that Bharat sets. Can there be the possibility to maintain open dialogue with all political groups? Can Bharat broaden diplomatic outreach, maintain an assertive, balanced and carefully calibrated response, make it clear on action against Hindu persecution, use Bharat's economic might as a bargaining chip, raise the issue of terror groups along the border, counter Bangladesh's aligning with China-Pakistan axis, leverage the position as a regional leader. More importantly, hegemonistic forces thousands of miles away, can they sit there and call the shots when Bharat is right there in the neighborhood? Hindol Sen Gupta, historian with us, Ambassador Deepak Vora with us. My namaste and Jai Hind. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Could we have done better, Ambassador Deepak Vora? Or should we look at our foreign policy and the fate of the people, not just this nation, the rest, based on who is in politics or who's on the chair there?
Thank you very much, Mr. Narasimhan. If I may say so from the bottom of my heart, you are brilliant, the way you put it across. You bowl me over and I'm at a loss for words. And I am as a loss for words. That's saying something. But thank you very much. It's absolutely outstanding. Let me tell you a little bit, give me a couple of minutes. One of the first things we learn in the Foreign Service is the Schwarzenberg principle, Felix Schwarzenberg. This is in the middle of the 19th century. The Magyars, the Hungarians, were beating up the Austrian emperor. There was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And all these chaps in Europe were uncles, aunties, cousins, nephews, sons-in-law, fathers-in-law of each other. So he appealed to the Tsar of Russia. He said, buddy, help me, these fellows are clobbering me. Tsar sent in his Cossacks, great fighters, and they thrashed the Magyars. Thereafter, Felix Schwarzenberg, I think middle of the 19th century, was asked, now you will be eternally grateful to Russia. He said, Austria will surprise the world with its ingratitude. So the first thing is, don't expect any... The most bracing statement in international relations that I have learned is just went to Bangladesh, and that was about 30 years ago. Already there were voices being raised saying that, look, two brothers were fighting, that's Pakistan and Bangladesh. Why did you intervene? And we said, your brother was doing all kinds of funny things to your wives and daughters and mothers and sisters. And then your leaders begged us to intervene. And I had 10 million of you fellows in Tripura and northeastern India. The Pakistanis would have had you for breakfast. And we were protecting you, etc., etc. But that I realized that the narrative was slowly changing because that Ershad fellow had Islamized Bangladesh, and also, it became a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, etc. Then you might remember some years ago was the Chittagong arms arrest, the biggest ever in our neighborhood, and all that was meant for the rebels in Assam. The idea was to destabilize our northeast. Huge. And of course, you know who paid the money. Bangladesh didn't have the money. It was during Sheikh Hasina's time. It was your uncle and mine across the pond, as we say, who was funding the whole thing. So this, having said this, that one should not expect anything. Now, what kind of leverage do we have with the atrocities being committed against minorities, the Hindus? Sir, the most important is our economic strength, what I refer to as the triple lock. Bilaterally, we can force the disaster of Dhaka, a fellow called Mohammed, whatever Khan, that he has to understand that we can really hurt them badly already. Their garments industry, as you know
Yes.
better than I do what's happening to it. And I've been speaking to my friends in Bangladesh. The second is international pressure. Hitting minorities is a war crime, sir. And if he's not able to do it, then the third lock, which is responsibility to protect. A UN-sanctioned movement from 2005 after the Rwanda crisis. We've done it in Kyrgyzstan, we've done it in Kenya, we've done it in a number of places. Where if the local government, the host government is not able to protect the minorities, anybody else can go in to protect them without even by your leave. Now that is the ultimate sword of democracy. I don't know whether we'll use it. But I think at the moment the contacts are taking place. And finally, sir, something very interesting. You've heard of the Arakan army.
Yes.
I know the Arakanis. Hardcore Buddhists. And if there's one thing they detest, and I'm saying this on behalf of the Arakanis, I'm not saying it from as something personal. They detest Islam. They detest the Bangladeshis. They detest the Rohingyas. Now, there are not many fighters. The Arakanis maybe 10,000, 20,000, but they are on the border with Bangladesh. They have controlled that. The Myanmarese army has run away, was asked to leave. And these guys are going to play merry hell into Bangladesh's border. They'll come running to us, sir, the fellows in Dhaka, saying help. Whether we should help or not, there are wiser minds than mine sitting in Delhi, and they will decide. But Bangladesh is going to be under enormous pressure in the coming few weeks, sir.
True. So Hindol Sengupta, agree, disagree with Ambassador Deepak Ora. The other aspect is when the liberation happened, at that time said it's culture and language that binds us. But now, has that now been thrown to the winds? Is this a continuum of a thought process that now seems to dominate, and it doesn't matter because they've opened passage to the very same people they broke away from?
No, this was obviously always going to happen, Anand. As always, when Sheikh Hasina left Bangladesh, the whole drumbeat, Indians, a part of a group of Indians take cues from the West, and they immediately began to beat the drumbeat saying, oh my God, look, here's a monsoon revolution, which is complete rubbish. I remember hearing academics say that we want to dispel that this has anything to do with Islamic radicals. I mean, if quote-unquote academics say these things, then what can one say? I mean, we're living in a fool's paradise. Today, please remember, Anand, today in Bangladesh, they want to relook at the flag. They want to relook at the constitution. Even the Bangladesh Supreme Court has said, Joy Bangla, the great slogan of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, will no longer be used. So this is going towards a particular direction, as we have said again and again, including on this show. Muhammad Yunus has no street power in Bangladesh. In fact, funnily enough, something Muhammad Yunus said, something very innocuous about the Prophet. Some groups in Bangladesh want to prosecute him now about that. So, and Bangladesh will face a lot of trouble. The ambassador is right in pointing out what's happening on their borders. That will very soon go out of control. And Bangladesh has very little resources. Everything, a large amount of even the food stuff that they have, a lot of it comes from India. So India has a lot of leverage in Bangladesh. We obviously don't want to use it. But there's going to be trouble in our eastern borders, much more trouble. Yeah. And I have a feeling that Muhammad Yunus will not be able to control this. The BNP, you would have noticed, Anand, is already sounding very cautious because the BNP see now that the interim government is not so interim after all. So there's going to be a lot of, volatility in Bangladesh. We should be careful about that. And certainly this is going to go downhill.
But Ambassador Deepak Ora, the Chinese are very, very surprisingly quiet. You pointed to the uncle on the other side of the pond who's engineered all of this. They were responsible even in the 1970s, and thereafter with whatever problems we saw in our borders in our area, somewhere their hand is manifest even this time around with what's happening in Manipur and Mizoram. So how do the dynamics change? And this is around the time that the NSA is going to travel to Beijing to have a chat about resolving issues between our own undefined borders with the Chinese occupied territory.
That is the nightmare of the parallel government, the state within a state across the pond. Now, one thing that when we talk of deep state, these are not chaps who are anti-America. These are very hardcore patriotic Americans. They are anti the elected government, and it consists of the CIA, the FBI, Defense Department, the Foreign Office, and businesses and newspapers and media channels and so on. They are the guys. They are, sir. You remember a chap called Barack Obama?
Yes.
He had promised to shut down Guantanamo Bay within a week of becoming president and release all those Al Qaeda fellows there. 8 years later, he wasn't able to lift a little finger to do anything. The deep state totally paralyzed him. And Donald Trump has talked about draining the swamp, etc. So these guys, no question, are calling the shots. Now, with China, they are terrified that India is not warming up, but India is attempting to normalize relations with China, and China is doing likewise. So the Ukraine crisis is over. Russia has won. There's no doubt about that. And that fellow whom I call Beginsky, because he's always begging everybody, went off to Paris to ask Macron and Trump, and they said, get lost. He asked the Brits, they said, get lost. So he's not going to get anything. That game is over. Now the focus will be on trying to weaken China. And if India warms up to China and China warms up to India, the deep state is going to be very, very upset about this. So my own feeling at this point of time is that Bangladesh, and forgive me, I'm using an American expression, Bangladesh is up shit creek without a paddle. Please forgive the profanity, but this is a very popular American expression, that you're in the daldal, और आपकी नाव में चप्पू भी नहीं है. So how are you going to get out of that daldal? This is what Bangladesh finds itself in. The Chinese will not intervene. Finally, sir, you referred to the BNP. The lady there who's very old and ailing, she wants her son to be the prime minister. Not today, not tomorrow, but yesterday. And Mohammed Yunus Khan wants another 4 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever of a permanently interim government till he's 90 years old. He won't move before that. So they are going to fight. I give you the example of Syria. You had this Jolani character and some others who came in and said, Assad is gone, brother, brother, darling, darling. Now they are lobbing shells at each other. This I have seen around the world where a government changes through violence, through protests, through demonstrations. And those guys who are united against a common enemy, when the common enemy is removed from the scene, they begin to fight with each other. We are seeing this happening in Bangladesh, sir.
One of the aspects is, Hindul Sen Gupta, as you said, what does that augur for Bharat? And is there a learning for us? The next time we try and get into and help, should we just help and then leave, or should we always ensure that our influence remains? How is it that we were not able to foresee what was going to be engineered in Bangladesh? How is it that we were not able to counter and mitigate those circumstances? And this has been engineered all around us. It happened in Sri Lanka, it happened in Maldives, it happened in Pakistan, it's happened in Bangladesh, it's also attempted in Nepal. And every time we have to wait 6 months later, 1 year later, they're coming back. But can we do this post facto? Or should we ensure that this doesn't happen in the first place? Because just like we can't enter anywhere into the Atlantic, transatlantic, nothing happens. The Russians landed at Cuba and the Monroe Act was invoked and America threatened nuclear weapons, right? So why is it that any other nation can come here and control things halfway around the world? What are we doing? Isn't that a fair question to ask of ourselves?
No, of course. But part of the reason, of course, Anand, as you well know, is that we are still at barely $3,000 per capita. I mean, if we were at $10,000 per capita and our defense indigenization were at a different level, the whole game would be different. Having said that, I want to take off from what Ambassador Vora said, because a lot of people don't say this, and some of us have said this for a long time, and he's absolutely right. You see, the greatest nightmare of the people that Ambassador Vora calls our friends across the pond is, in a sense, a Sino-Indo sort of, some sort of rapprochement. And one of the things that has worried them for a long time about Prime Minister Modi is that Prime Minister Modi is somebody who really wants to get things done. And, nothing is off the table. So tomorrow, if this means that some sort of negotiated border settlement will have to be done with the Chinese, well, it's on the table. And that's not what certain kinds of deep states ever want. They don't. I mean, this is the stuff of nightmare, right? Asia, where China and India have built some sort of understanding among themselves. I mean, that's the stuff of nightmares for many people around the world. There is one thing, and Ambassador Vora will bear with me on this. Remember, in geopolitics, ambiguity is a very important tool. And I think India must keep certain ambiguities alive.
Right.
This ambiguity helps us in many, many ways. Even in nuclear, I teach my students nuclear weapons. Ambiguity is very important there too. So ambiguity in whatever we are saying, ambiguity is a very important tool, apart from, of course, our hard tools.
Well, so strategic autonomy should also be strategic ambiguity. So SA can stand for both. Thank you, gentlemen. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Short but sharp, as always. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.
Winding up this edition of The Right Stand.